I'm going to spend some time talking about this OER landscape and what that means within the community college sector, and then we'll have a dialogue about what that means for you. But just some level setting. How many of you have been engaged in some OER work? How many of you have published or created OER? Okay, just a handful. The general level setting that takes place is that the OER can take the forms of quizzes, textbooks, assignments. They're basically learning objects. So the modules that you will be creating certainly fall into that category. And using David Wiley's 5 R's of retain, reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute, as was mentioned earlier, you're going to be looking at adapting OERs and what is already available. So it may be some creation, but in a lot of cases, it's adapting what's already out there and then further adapting what is out there. So hopefully this large network is created of adaptation. And the question came up earlier about, how do you handle the versioning of this and the broken links? And Arash and I were talking before the meeting, and we think maybe the original version on the BioQuest site would be the version of record for this, and then linking out to the different sites. But we can certainly talk about that as we move forward. So for me, OER it's not a movement about textbooks. It's not a movement about cost savings. It's a movement about access, and it's a social equity issue. And it's about providing the ability for students to have an education despite the cost of the high cost of textbooks. And we all have heard the horror stories of students who have to pay $300 for a textbook and it's not used, or it's partially used, and then they go to return it at the end of the semester and the bookstore says, oh, we'll give you $5 for it. I have a whole bookcase, well, it's not a bookcase anymore because it's in a box in my attic, of books from my undergrad that I just didn't use, and I couldn't sell back. It wasn't worth selling back, so I simply just packed them up, thinking, well, it'll make me look smart. That didn't work either. So this OER is about access. It's not about just cost savings and textbooks. So there are 3 prongs to this and to the success: institution, faculty, and students. And the institution aspect of this we're going to leave out for the time being, but I want to focus on the faculty because that's where you all come in. So I want to tell you two quick stories. Daniel Schrader, biology professor extraordinaire. He thought I did not. Okay, 1979 is 18-year-old freshman interested in sleep and cheap beer. Okay, that was it. Was required to take biology as part of my degree. I wanted to be a journalist, as I mentioned earlier. Biology was not at the top of my frame of thinking. Go through the first semester, drop out. Rather drop out than get a failing grade. Dr. Schrader didn't care whether I was there or not there. Second semester, same thing. Finally decided I've had enough biology. I'll wait until later on in my academic career to take a science, which I did. He didn't care enough to help me through biology. I want to fast forward to a conversation that I was having with a colleague at Montgomery College by the name of Carrie Fitzgerald, who teaches astronomy. Absolutely life-changing experience that I had when I was talking to her about 5 years ago. And I am convinced that if I had had a professor like Carrie Fitzgerald to teach me biology, it would have changed my trajectory. So I'm talking to Carrie, and she's all enthusiastic about this book called Longitude. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. Absolutely phenomenal book about the clockmaker John Harrison, 18th century clockmaker, who comes up with this way of calculating longitude at sea. And so I'm talking to Carrie, and she said, you might want to read it. It's interesting. Well, I picked it up, and I couldn't put it down. And it's written in a way that for someone who's not a mathematician or STEM person at heart, found fascinating. And so someone like Carrie, I think, has the ability to change the way students view curriculum. Just like each of you have that ability to change the way students are impacted in either biology or math. So as we're developing these modules and as working on these modules, keep the students at the heart of what you're doing, because not all of them are blessed with the innate ability to do biology or math. And they're going to need your enthusiasm to help get through this work. So that's the faculty stool of the success, or the part of the stool. The student, I want to encourage you as you're working with these modules to not leave the students out of the equation. Bring them into the creation of the modules. Ask them what's working and what's not working, and let them help build the modules. It moves beyond this OER just from a textbook standpoint to the whole open pedagogy standpoint of putting the student at the center of the creation and letting them help build this work. And I think you'll find that they have some excellent ideas. They can bring in to the process what works for them and not necessarily what we think should work for them. We were having a conversation yesterday about how at all of our institutions we focus on students and student success and what's best for students. But we often do that without ever asking students. We don't bring them into the conversation. We don't ask them to provide input into what is working best for them. So as we're going through this module development, I want to encourage us to keep the students at the forefront of what we're doing. So I want to introduce you to Amber. Amber is a U.S. Army veteran who was stationed in Colorado a few years ago and got a degree in criminal justice, but for a number of personal reasons could not engage in a job in the criminal justice field. So she had a friend who was living in Montgomery County and said, come on out, come east. Amber wanted to do nursing. So she said, well, I'll move east. She was originally from New Jersey. It'll be closer to home. So she came to Montgomery County. What her friend did not tell her was the high cost of living in Montgomery County. So no family, no children, it was okay, but she still had a hard time living in Montgomery County. So she decided to move about an hour and a half north of Rockville. So close to the Pennsylvania line, an hour and a half traffic-wise, not necessarily geographic. So every day, Amber comes down to our Rockville or Germantown campus, depending on where her class is, takes classes in the morning, and then we have a hospital on our Germantown campus. In the afternoon, she works a full shift, 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the hospital. Leaves the hospital at 10 p.m., goes back home, gets home about 12:30, does her studying, whatever, starts the whole process over about 4 or 5 in the morning. So I'm sitting down with Amber, and Amber's engaged in a number of OER courses, and she loves it because it provides her with an opportunity to put food on her table. Not to engage in further education, but because she cannot live in Montgomery County, the savings that she's doing on textbooks allows her to put gas in her car and food on her table. That's why OER is an access issue. It's an equity issue. And I can guarantee you that each of us each of you has an AMBER at your school. And so as you're developing this stuff, keep people like Amber in mind, because those are the ones who are going to be impacted by what you're doing. She loves the OER. She loves how it's broken down into different modules, because on her job at the hospital, during her breaks, she can just pull out her phone and read the digital content. She doesn't have to lug around a lot of textbooks, a lot of paper. And for her, it's a convenience issue as well. So a couple of players in this OER space in the community colleges. How many of you are from Achieving the Dream schools? Okay, a couple. Achieving the Dream is a national network of community colleges focusing on student success, equity, and access. They just ran completed a 3.5-year OER project that involved 38 community colleges from 13 states. And the focus of this project, grant funded by the Hewlett Foundation, was to create OER degrees, completely OER degrees. And here's some stats as to what the final outcome was. 160,000 students reached 600 OER courses, 6,600 sections, and nearly 2,000 instructors participating. So why is that relevant to this group? Because a lot of the stuff that was created in math and science courses, because they had to be created for the degree completion. So as we're working through and looking at modules, there are opportunities to connect with faculty from around the country who have already done some of this stuff. And we can pull those modules. All the information and the content that was created was OER. It had to be openly licensed. So that's available to you to adapt to your particular needs. And then another group that's heavily involved in the OER space in community colleges is the Community College Consortium for Open Education Resources. CCC OER is part of OE Global, which is the international OER community. CCC OER focuses on North America, 34 states, and 90 member colleges and consortia. Now it doesn't seem like a lot of members, but when you take the consortia aspect, it multiplies by the number of actual schools impacted. CCC OER is a great opportunity to network with faculty, community college faculty from around the country. They have a wonderful listserv that you can be a part of. You don't have to be a member, or your school doesn't have to be a member of CCC OER to be part of that listserv. And on a regular basis, information is shared out about new OER that's available. And if you're looking for something, you post something on the listserv, and within minutes, you generally get some really good feedback about what is happening nationally in that space. We can get you information on joining that listserv if you are interested. So we've heard earlier that about some of the barriers to OER success, and some of these barriers you may have experienced at your school. We were talking earlier about the inclusive access model and what that means, and what the publishers are doing to try to recoup some of the losses that they've experienced because of the whole OER model. And you pay, or students pay a set fee at the beginning, and then have access to the content throughout the semester. I'm not a big proponent of the inclusive access model for a number of reasons, which I can share with you over lunch. But the publishers are not going away in this space. They have a financial stake that they want to protect. As was mentioned earlier, the resources bundled with textbooks is often a barrier to OER adoption. So, how many of you are using the OpenStax textbooks or some variation? Okay. One of the criticisms over the years of OpenStax has been that content, that supporting content, the PowerPoints, the test banks, that just weren't part of the original idea. Fortunately, the community of practitioners has gotten together and created those PowerPoints and shared those modules and put information up on OER Commons that is readily available, that makes the adoption of textbooks like OpenStax a little more easier for faculty to adopt. What other barriers have you noticed at your institution that may not be up here? This is the interactive part of the presentation. Oh. Yeah, okay. That time constraint, you'd want to provide some sort of release time or something to do that. Yes?
They try to encourage us to maintain the same textbook for different classes. Same classes.
Okay. So common textbook across. Yeah, and we've had that situation at our school. I'll call it a situation because some faculty embrace it, some faculty do not, and it's created some concerns having a common textbook. As we move, as Margaret had said, we have 3 campuses, and they all have each of them has their own personality. But we have students who move from campus to campus, so we focus a lot on the common student experience. And the thought is that if there are different textbooks, how can they have that same common experience if they're moving from campus to campus? What other barriers to success? Yes? Mm-hmm. That help, sure. Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. Any other barriers that you've come across? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, Jillian, because Arash and I were talking about this, walking back from dinner last night. How do you trust the content from Pearson or McGraw-Hill? You look at it, right? You vet it. I don't think, and when I was a journalism faculty member, a book rep would come in and say, here, we have this great book on mass media law. And I said, oh, great, I'll accept it sight unseen. You vet those products, you look at it, and faculty have to do the same thing with the OER. You have to vet it. And fortunately, a lot of the OER has matured where it's peer reviewed now. And the other complaint that we hear a lot about a barrier to success is faculty saying, you're taking away my academic freedom. You're telling me I have to do this. When in fact, what we're doing is increasing your academic freedom, because not only are you not bound by a particular textbook, but you can pull in material from a number of different resources and really enrich the learning experience for the student. And then consequently, you can allow students to bring in content and let them be part of that learning experience. There are a number of great anthologies that have been created in the humanities side, just from students providing access to material and writing their own material. And the same can happen with these modules as we move forward. Any other barriers that we want to touch on? Yes? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and three generations from your side with different factors in your classroom. And it's going to make a change after you're going to put time and money into one classroom classroom. And that's not reality cost for you name it. And then even with OER, there's that question of how do I want to tie in behind it? It's difficult.
Sure.
It's difficult. We don't have the supportive faculty.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the belief, and that can cause the classroom experience. And therefore, impossible to guide them.
Let me point you mentioned the generational aspect. There's a really good book out called Sticking Points by Hayden Shaw. And he looks at the different generations, not only within our own households, but within the education environment and what that may mean within a classroom setting. And it does create issues. And I can give the link to Chris and we can get that up on the site as well. But it's a really good overview of 5 generations that we're experiencing within the classroom environment and the home environment. So as we have embarked on this OER focus and this journey, one of the things we've done at Montgomery, and I think a number of schools have done, is moved away from the cost savings aspect. And you know, the numbers are there. I think at Montgomery we've saved students $7 million over the past 3 years in textbook costs, you know, and that all sounds wonderful. But it doesn't mean anything from an institution standpoint, and this is going back to that stool where the institution comes into play. That doesn't mean anything if the student learning is impacted, and it's impacted negatively. Because why are you going to just save students $100, $200, but tell them, oh, but your academic aspect is going to deteriorate as well? We're going to save you money, but you're going to be dumb as dirt when you leave here. It doesn't make sense. And so from an institution standpoint, you have to make that leap from cost savings to student learning. I will tell you that students are still here. They assume that the product and the content of material that you provide them will positively impact their student learning. But for many of them, it's here. And as part of the ATD grant, they surveyed a number of students from the grant schools, and almost every school, the results were the same. Students were focused on cost savings and not necessarily learning outcomes. They wanted the quality to be there, but they didn't need all the glitz and glitter that comes with the publisher created content. They just wanted the content. So then moving away or further down this spectrum to this concept of social justice and this equity access and what can you do within your classes. And one of the projects that we've been engaged in at Montgomery is a focus on the Sustainable Development Goals, and how do you take open pedagogical assignments and tie them to the SDGs, and then have students go out into their communities and implement those assignments and put them into practice within their own communities. So for the students, it's real life experience. It's how can you impact where I live and what I do. And I would encourage you, as you're doing the math and biology modules, as you're looking at this, focus on how it can impact students in their own communities and what it means to them, what real life experiences it provides for them. Just a little bit about licensing, because it's going to come up, and we'll talk about this. And there are 6 different types of Creative Commons licensing, from the least restrictive to the most restrictive. And while the licensing is important, and there's a whole attribution aspect to it, and Jennifer and the group that was working within the the collection site has put up some attribution generators from Open Washington. But let me just caution you not to focus. The licensing will come. I want to focus or have you focus on how do you plan on using the content? What is it that you're looking to do with the content that is created? And then that will help drive some of the licensing aspects. You know, the licensing, as I said, is important, and there's some restrictions that as you go down this require of you, but don't get so hung up on the licensing. It's more focused on what it is that you want your products to do. And with that, I want to have you listen to a short video that was produced with CCC OER, and I think, oops. Okay. And no, that's all right. This is the difference between a PC person and an Apple person. That doesn't seem to be. Yeah, it was working earlier. Well, that's all right. I can load it. That's all right. I can send the link out, and we'll do it that way. That's fine. There we go. There we go.
Perfect.
Quality was there. I didn't feel any difference between the courses that I had that included a book as opposed to the course I had that had a Z course.
I think it's a really important thing to have, especially since you can have it on your device, because it's good to have a book, but it's a lot better to have it online because you can take it anywhere. If you want to go, sit down somewhere, like in the library or anything, you take it with you. So we don't always want to be carrying around a book.
With the Z courses, I found myself very prepared to complete the assignments well and complete the tests well while getting a good grade.
I used to have a very difficult time being able to get the finances to get my textbooks. It was also just a hassle that any college student knows of being able to find those textbooks and have the sufficient funds for it. So definitely having the OER course was very beneficial because it made it very easy to study right off my laptop or even my smartphone.
Financially, a Z course allows me to invest that money back into another course, enabling me to finish my degree sooner than previously planned.
It's really easy. You just follow the instructions on the website. Typically, the professor puts up a link and tells you how to set everything up. You don't have to be that tech savvy to figure it out, even though I would assume that a lot of students are, or if they're not, they have someone that can help them with that kind of stuff.
Felt that OER gave us the opportunity to see a bunch of different viewpoints instead of being limited to just one author's take. And I really appreciated the fact that OER costs nothing to us.
Thought when I first signed up for the class and my professor explained what exactly our course would look like and the material, is exciting. I think just because a lot of feedback that I've given in the past was not having to lug around a bunch of textbooks depending on my course load.
I liked that before every chapter there were objectives that you could read and basically see what the chapter was going to be on. The highlighted important takeaways from the chapter were either italicized or in bold, so that I appreciated that.
As you work in your incubators, you'll see this really start to take shape, I think, and have that student perspective. Are there any questions that you might have? Yes, ma'am.
I have questions. So you were talking about the Achieving the Dream OER degree program. I'd be super interested to learn more about that. But I put up a lot of numbers, but the number I did not see was how many actually completed in the form of either graduation or transfer.
Well, because it was a 3-year grant, the number of students who would have completed, not all of them have gone through the program yet.
So when did this start?
2017, 2016.
And so is it only 4-year school?
2-year schools, 2 years. Yeah. Well, they would have completed if they had come in and taken 2 years to complete. As I don't know at your school, at our school, they don't do that. They're not, that's the utopian student there.
So right now there's no data on completion.
Right. And the other thing with these degrees, and we know this with online degrees, for example, they're pathways. So a student may come in and have the opportunity to complete this degree, but that doesn't mean every section that would fit into a student's schedule is going to be part of that OER degree. So they were more pathways than anything else. But I can get you the final report on the OER degree initiative. Yeah.
Okay, and just one more question. So when you talk about accessibility and barriers, it occurred to me while we were watching this, talking about, I use my phone, it's so nice to be able to look it up on my computer. What do you say to critics who say that itself is a barrier to accessibility for those students who can't afford internet access, phones, and computers? Anybody can get a book with financial aid, right? But they're financial aid enough to buy that smartphone. So what do you say to those critics who say having a digital format is itself an accessibility barrier?
One of the things that we've done at Montgomery is initiate a computer laptop loaner program. And so we loan laptops out for those students who cannot afford or don't have access to that. And in some cases, there's some funding to give a wireless connectivity card along with that laptop. And then we have a lot of students who do this work in the library. And you're right, but that is a barrier. Yeah. for many of them, it is their connection to the outside world, yeah, or to their internal world. But accessibility, I'm glad you brought up accessibility, because that doesn't just mean in this context having access to the content. It means being compliant. And as you're working with and developing these modules, you have to keep in mind that this OER stuff doesn't mean you have the right to get away from ADA. It reinforces that even that much more, that you have that responsibility to be compliant with all those federal regulations around ADA. Other questions? Yes. Right. It's expensive. It's a cost. Right. So a couple of things, and I'll turn it back over. When at our institution, when we have faculty who are creating videos, we tell them come with a script. And so as they're developing the video, that script can then be uploaded as the closed captioning. For those faculty who are pulling in stuff from YouTube, there is a closed captioning component to it. It's not perfect, but you can go in and edit that. And so we encourage faculty, you have to watch the video, make sure the captioning is right, and if it's not, go in and edit. But I don't know if there's anything as part of the grant that addresses this. I don't think so.
So that was not specifically addressed in the grant. There's a very narrow focus on what is supported. I will say that BioQuest has a Universal Design for Learning initiative. And so we have been compiling resources, and we have a community that you can tap into to get advice and information about how to remain ADA compliant.
Okay, well, to keep us on schedule, I will wrap up, and if you have questions during lunch, I'll be happy to answer any of those.
All right, let's thank Mike.